In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
Hey, welcome to The Last Angry DJ. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill. I'm the old guy that was around back in the golden age of broadcasting, and that's my good friend Alexander Knight, who's here with us right now as the producer, and he's the young guy that represents all the younger stuff, and we have other folks here, too. We're looking forward to our guest. Alex, what's going on?
Good to be here, Mitch, for episode 59. I'm excited about today's guest. I'm always excited when we have guests. This is The Last Angry DJ, the show that intersects old media versus new media. It's not just about the world of broadcast and the ever-changing world of that and all the challenges that we go through, but it's also about online content creation, YouTube production, podcast production. So we like to mix those things up a little bit. And I'm really excited about today's show. We got Mark Giuliani here, who's an integral part of this panel. So I'm going to say hello to Mark. How are you, Mark?
Hey, hello, Alex. How are you? Looking forward to the show. Exciting guests. So please ask your question so I get something to do.
And that's Mark. He doesn't even have to use a teleprompter to be able to talk like that. It's the brilliance of Mark Giuliani, who, by the way, is the owner of WGMD down in Lewis, Delaware, and WSU. It used to be SUX. It's USX. I know he changed it because we used to kid the station being called Sucks Radio. I don't know what that was all about. Back in the day, back when my next guest here.
It was short for Sussex County.
Of course it was, but it still was Sucks Radio. What can you do? All right, good to have you here, Mark. Good to have you here, Alex. And our next guest is somebody I've known for many years in my broadcasting career here in Wilmington, Delaware. This is the northern part of Delaware, and our guest, Dave Mackenzie, is here. Dave has worked at just about every radio station in town except for our friends at Delmarva Broadcasting. And Dave is currently the chief engineer at WVUD, the University of Delaware radio station. Good to have you here, Dave. Let's talk broadcasting, technology, and fun stuff like that. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite for the show today.
Well, you know, of all the people I know, when I get into discussions with our good friend of shows, Steve Stryker, and when you're there, you're sort of the keeper of the flame for all things technical. And I'm always amazed at how you cover stuff historically because you remember everything. And I always say to myself, I'm sort of not a practicing engineer type, but I know enough just to be dangerous. And one of our favorite subjects is talking about broadcast microphones. And I know that's something that Alex likes talking about because microphones that are used to get our voices out over the airwaves, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on a podcast or a vodcast, or just doing a Zoom meeting, we're kind of like gear slobs when it comes to talking about, because we think, Dave, that the most important thing when you're doing a Zoom or a video podcast like this is having really good audio. Audio is the most important thing. Something about our ears just doesn't tolerate half-assed audio if it's coming out over the airwaves. And the next thing, of course, is the video and the lighting and the quality of the internet connection. But Alex, would you agree that there's a certain litany of things that we obsess over for doing this program or any show like this? Don't we have things that we're concerned about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to any kind of complex production, right? So yes, there are always things to concern ourselves with, which we can get into, but we have a fairly complex pipeline.
Yeah, and we were kind of trained on the crucible of office hours, which is a program that Alex still continues to work on. And on the crucible of that, I mean, is that we were always working our very best with these things we called ruthless reviews that would sometimes review everything about our program. It was just one of those things that we would say, "Well, Mitch, I hear some background noise today. What's up with that?" And we kind of worked through all of those problems, and eventually we were able to get the quality of video and sound that we have. So if we went around the room, and I'll just say it for everybody's benefit, what's being used right now, Alex has got his fabulous 414 recently back from Vanguard Audio with a refresh. I think they cleaned the schmutz off his condenser capsule that was on that. And then down to Mark Giuliani, he's got himself, is that a special edition RE20 that you have there?
You call it a special edition because it is black, but I just picked whatever was on Amazon that said RE20 next to it.
Well, you got it. You got a special edition because they didn't have that for very long. And then looking over to Dave, you got what's that? A Lyra, an AKG Lyra?
AKG Lyra, yes.
Did you get that as a friend of Steven Stryker when he
I
was with
did.
Harman?
I did. He
How did
sent
I
that
know?
to me when he worked for Harman.
There you go. And I think he still uses that too. And I have my 414. The interesting thing about podcasts is that when they first came on the scene and we got to see what was in the room, they always stuck the microphone like right there in the face of the podcaster. It was always in the shot, always like it somehow qualified this as a real podcast because they've got a Heil PR40 or something like that, just sitting there, inches away from their face. I'm not a big fan of putting the microphone in the shot. I guess, Dave, you're with me. It's like microphones are meant to be, out of the shot for the most part. It is here, right here, my 414.
Or, right here.
Yeah, exactly. But some of the things podcasters borrowed from broadcast radio, which always seem to qualify themselves with a lineage of microphones. You were either in the Electro Voice camp or you were in the Shure camp for the most part. And what were the most popular broadcast microphones? We'll start out with Electro Voice, because I remember starting out with an old 635A at my high school radio station. What would be considered to be standards for broadcasting with those microphones that gave them a good broadcast sound?
Well, the 635 was a omnidirectional mic, and it's best used. A lot of people use them in news, and they actually made one that had a shaft that was twice as long. And you'd remember some of the game show hosts used to use that mic on television, just because it had a long reach, but it was still a 635 Omni mic. The other mic that they made that looked like that was the RE50, and the RE50, it's a fatter microphone because there's a 635A inside of it, and it has
no
a
handling
rubber
noise. Yeah,
a rubber isolation and a larger pop filter on the front of it, but inside it's a 635A.
So 635A is sort of like the Shure SM57. I always get the number 57 or 58.
No, it's an omnidirectional mic. Almost every Shure mic made is a directional mic. Like the 57 and the 58, they are both the same capsule. 58 has a large pop filter so that you can't pop it with speech. The 57 is the same mic without any filtering on the front of it. And it's much better for using it for recording instruments that don't produce any wind that would pop the microphone.
So, Dave, I think they call that a Unidyne pop filter on.
Well, the whole thing comes from the capsule. The capsule was a Unidyne capsule, and it started in the 545 series, the Unidyne 545, and they also had different numbers to it depending on what case they put on the microphone. But it was a Unidyne 545 capsule that the 630 that the that the SM57, 58, and the entire Unidyne series of mics all have the same capsule.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, that same capsule is also used in the SM7, which is the big mic with the large pop filter foam end on it. They cherry pick them. They when they come from the factory, they'll measure them and they'll put the very best capsules in the SM7s.
Oh, that's cool. And that's a mic that was around forever in the broadcast world, but also kind of leaked into the recording industry, because I think like Michael Jackson used one of those to do all his vocals. Quincy Jones specified that. And that dynamic mic, because on that particular side of the neither Shure or Electro Voice in radio stations had condenser mics for the most part. It was those old bulletproof dynamics like the 635A and then all the variations of that on Electro Voice. It was just a mic that it would get beat to shit all the time, and it would just keep on ticking. And I think
they used to have a commercial where they would hammer a nail with the case of the 635A, then plug it in and show you that it still works after they pounded in a nail with it.
Yeah, and you'd see that one go on with TV crews, and probably to this day they still use it because it's just such a utility microphone. It might get scratched and beat up. If you look closely, a lot of microphones when they're doing interviews or pressers, and you look closely, and they got like a forest of microphones in front of the politician. You can always see a 635A in there somewhere, and it's usually kind of beat up, but it still sounds good. And I would say the same is true for the SM57 on the Shure side. It's just a microphone that persists and sounds great. Might even sound better than the 635A, which was my first mic, by the way. I bought the 635A as my first when I played DJ at home before I actually got on the radio. So that was kind of fun.
The Shure microphones were directional and also had a large amount of proximity effect. Proximity effect is the closer you work to the mic,
howdy,
the more bass the mic puts out. Now, Electro Voice was famous for their variable D, which was their patented name for putting in a reflector in the back of the microphone with some slots that would prevent the proximity effect.
Did I see that first on an RE16?
RE16 had it, and quite a few of the other RE11 had it. Quite a few of their mics that were directional had that variable D technology, so that Electro Voice pretty much didn't have proximity effect in any of their microphones.
Wow. And those pretty much persisted in pretty much we'll say 80% of radio stations in the 70s, maybe even into the 80s, as just the sort of the staple of microphones being used. Unless you work for like NPR or the artsy-fartsy FM station, then you might see U87, which I've got behind me here, a condenser microphone, because they want to talk like this. But
most American broadcast boards did not have the correct input electronics for a condenser microphone.
That's interesting. Because of phantom powering, or why?
They did not have phantom power, and they were looking for a certain gain and impedance that American microphones were designed with. And the German mics were designed more for recording studio boards that had a different electronic front end on the high-end preamps that you'd use in a recording studio versus the basic preamps that came in a Gates board, as an example. Oh, okay. Coming back from the tube days, all of those old tube boards, they would have a microphone transformer in front of the mic preamp. And that actually would have taps on it that you could change the impedance to match the output of the microphone.
Oh, that's cool. And I kind of lived with the lovely this is proximity, by the way, being able to talk like this, which was just a technique that we used to get, I used it to become up close and personal. I said, I have something I want to tell you, folks. Stay away from high fructose corn syrup. That's how I would use the proximity to make a more intimate conversation. Now, nowadays, people don't do that so much. But the first time I ran into no more proximity was using the mic that Mark Giuliani has there, using the early stage RE20. When I went to WFIL, that's what they had. And when I leaned in to do my, proximity special effect, there was no proximity. So it kind of put me off a little bit. But why would they do that? Is it just a style that they were trying to eliminate?
They wanted to make a mic that sounded the same at any distance. so that you didn't
Okay.
have to worry about when the artist would move in closer or move away and the equalization of the mic would change. It doesn't happen with the Electro Voice microphones.
And
Now,
it's
some
go
artists
ahead.
use that. Some artists use that as a enhancement or a feature of their voice.
Of course they did. It's mic technique.
Right.
It's why you would put a pop filter or a splash filter, as you used to call it, so that when you were talking, you didn't hit the plosives and things like. But see, a good mic technique, Dave, as you will often recognize, is like I've been dealing with mics a long time, and yes, I do have a little pop filter on this microphone. Sometimes you can avoid popping just by saying the word properly. Like when I said the word popping, I kind of played it down. I went
Right.
popping, or I smiled through the word. So you can get around plosives and sibilances and things like that if you work with that. But that brings up another interesting point is, what is that, your pop filter that you have there
I
on your
have a
lap,
pop
Dave?
filter here. I can pop over this mic if I need it.
Well, you're not popping.
I know, because I'm not talking into it. I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
past it.
Across it, talking
Yep.
across it. And that's part of mic technique. Alex, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the different mic techniques that are available out there to get through your
Yeah,
show?
yeah. I mean, you covered a lot of it. I mean, mic technique is critical, and that's unfortunately that's something that I find that's sorely lacking. You have to train people on how, and it takes experience. But one of the challenges is that for a lot of the productions that I do, which is mostly podcasts, when you get guests coming in, they've never been on a microphone before, so you are dealing with nerves and inexperience. And the other challenge is convincing people to put headphones on, because if they can't actually hear their own voice through the microphone, you can't fix a problem that you can't hear. So for example, like if I get really off axis on this microphone, suddenly, like, my voice is really, really quiet and I sound really, really distant. You wouldn't hear that unless you actually had headphones. Right now, I know not to do that because I've spent many years in front of a microphone, right? And I know not to eat the microphone like that. That's also another problem, because you can overmodulate and you can get plosives and all that stuff that you already talked about, Mitch.
And condenser microphones, Dave, are more susceptible to being overloaded or crapping out. A dynamic mic generally doesn't do that. Is that a fair
Well, the
statement to make?
condenser mic has a large, probably an inch or more in diameter diaphragm inside. It is very sensitive. So it is possible to flex that diaphragm so far that it explodes or pops, because it's flexing beyond and hitting its stops at the end. It's actually moving too far in and out and banging against its stop. And what makes those mics so sought after is that the fact that, because that diaphragm is so loose, it's able to track very high frequencies. It's able to track very low frequencies. It has a wide frequency response, and that good quality is also makes it very sensitive to any kind of wind, which will actually push that diaphragm, and you hear it as explosives.
How about RF? Are they more or less likely to be affected by the transmitter down the hall?
No, not really. They're about the same, and it all depends on the shielding of the microphone, how well the metal case is designed. And one of the things that mics are made with is this special material called mu metal. And mu metal is used inside the microphone to shield from magnetic. It's an anti-magnetic metal. And if they surround the mic inside, it's less likely to pick up magnetic fields, which cause hum.
Great. And I think, Alex, you just went through a situation where your mic was repaired at Vanguard, and they found an issue with the way it was grounded that caused problems.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The XLR connector that's at the bottom of this microphone here, he found that there's supposed to be a chassis tab, or a chassis ground tab, and that was missing. So he replaced the connector. So now the chassis has been ground to that connector, and all my RF problems went away. By the way, we've been talking about Electro Voice microphones quite a bit. For those, for the uninitiated who have never seen these or used these, and this is just one example, and I own multiples. I own RE20s, which is what Mark's using, the black one. This is an RE27 from Electro Voice. Let's see if we can get that into, I don't know if I
Pull
can
it
get
back a
this
little.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get my
There.
autofocus to snap into that so it doesn't see my face.
Right. The RE27
but that's-
and the RE20 are very similar, except the
neodymium.
RE27 is made with neodymium magnets, which gives it a level that's much hotter output than the RE20.
It's all in the magnets, folks. Magnets are happening. And what's also interesting about the RE20s that Alex is showing there, and the one that Mark is using, is that's the same mic I used, 45 years ago at WFIL. It's still being used. Maybe some improvements might have been made to it. But I guess what it says is that there are some things about physics, and this is directed back to you, Dave, that just can't be changed. I mean, some physics just doesn't change. So, a condenser is a capacitor, and a capacitor works a certain way. Putting neodymium in a RE27 may improve certain aspects of the mic, but it's still basically the same microphone. Is that how it works? Is there any quantum?
Well, it's going to change the sound. So here's the thing about neodymium magnets is that they will oftentimes mics that have neodymium magnets have a much brighter characteristic to them. So for example, like this RE27 sounds very different from an RE20. It is much brighter, and it doesn't always work well on all voices, because if you got a kind of a shrill nasal quality to your voice, that microphone is not going to help you at all. And in fact, that's why it's so critical to pair the right microphone to the right voice. People always ask me all the time, what's the best microphone? There's no such thing. It's not about price. It's about finding the right one for you. And you have to hear yourself and try that microphone and see which one you think you sound better on.
And that's a good point to make, because I can't tell you how many times conversations come up and it's somebody either starting out with a podcast or whatever, and they're saying, which mic should I buy? And I guess my answer would be, but I'll let Dave continue this, is that there's probably a microphone made for you that'll sound great with you, but there are also some really great microphones that may not sound great with your voice, just as Alex was indicating. How
Mark's
do you match people
graphics
up?
On the screen.
Yeah,
there.
sure. We can bring them up, see what those are the difference between the neodymium and the regular RE20. But Dave, what is the main mic you use at WVOD?
Well, it's actually, there are three mics in that series. There's the RE20, there's the RE27, and the RE320. The 320 sits halfway between the RE20 and the 27 in terms of brightness. It's not as bright as the 27. Its output is a little louder than the RE20. It's not as dark as the RE20 is. So that's the one we use, is the RE320 at WVUD.
And I think it's a little cheaper too.
It is, because the RE20s have been made in the United States for years, and the RE320s are made offshore and imported here so that they can manufacture them for a little less money.
Yeah, watch out for the tariffs now, too, because some countries are going to get nailed with, I bet that 320 is made offshore in a country called China. Is it made out of Chinesium?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Instant tariff. Maybe 140% right now and counting. It goes up and down.
I think they'll sit there and negotiate their way through it, but it'll take us a while to come through the other end of that negotiation.
All right, that's good. A couple of questions or comments are coming up on YouTube, and I want to jump over to Mark so that he can read some of those for us. Mark, what do people have to say about the show so far? Do they have any questions or comments?
Well, Steven Stryker's very excited to have Dave as a guest and likes his background. And we have a question from Vintage Nouveau. Dave.
By the way, you have your microphones up, so you need to put your face in there.
Oh.
Gee, Mark looks different.
Yeah,
there he is.
Thank
you, sir.
All right, Dave, any thoughts from your recent trip to Japan?
Oh, cool.
Any thoughts? Well, we did go to a broadcast station while we were in Japan, and it was a small community radio station. And it was interesting that all the broadcast equipment they had was almost brand new, all U.S. radio station equipment, from the transmitter, which was a Crown, to the consoles, which were Axias. So everything in the studio was U.S. broadcast equipment.
Now, would you say that's the same all over Europe? I don't think so. I think there are European brands.
Europe is different in that they are very tied to their own local brand. So you're more likely to see British or German equipment when you go over into Europe.
Well, didn't you at the U of D have a Klotz board and what do you have now? Lawo? How do you say that?
No, we did have Klotz, and we switched to Wheatstone.
Oh, Wheatstone. See, here's what you got to need to understand is that in the U.S., the broadcasters sort of endorse a certain line of consoles or broadcast equipment, and you're either a Axia Telos, or you're either a Wheatstone, or you might be some of the other brands that are out there. I'm trying to remember some of the other. There's like 2 or 3, and they all have their own, or at one point, all had proprietary audio over IP. So it was you'd always see something that looked familiar, either a microphone or a console or whatever. But in Europe, they kind of, went away from that. I can see Japan because they're
Europe
fans
used
of us
a lot
over
of
there.
Studer equipment.
There was.
Studer was the same company as AKG, and they're all under that Harman and now Samsung arm of equipment manufacturers.
Unfortunately, not the same Studer that I grew up with. When Willie Studer made the multi-tracks and the console, I had a Studer console. They were beautifully made, brilliantly, and I don't think that that kind of quality assurance is still available that used to be there. But a nice brand. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with it.
And NPR was mostly Studer.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I have a cheap version of the Wheatstone board behind me. It's the Audio Arts. It's one of their first hybrid consoles, and I got it because I just like to have a broadcast console under my fingers, with those long throw faders and all that kind of stuff. It makes me feel good. And the fact that I have a U87, I bought that U87 in 1979 because in my head, what's the best microphone I could possibly buy to do voiceover work? And that was the one that I thought would be. Now, it wasn't necessarily the best one, but I'm so intimate with that microphone. I'm so personally invested in this that I know how to work it. I know how to play that microphone for different scripts or how to use the proximity to my advantage, even though they say it's not a style that you want to do so more. And it takes everything from a screaming car spot down to an intimate, product placement, maybe for some kind of weird product on the internet. Go ahead.
I'm guessing that you don't run it directly into the board, but you run it through some sort of mic processor before it hits the board.
I do. Again, this is a radio thing. Having some kind of processing out of the microphone into the board is a radio thing. It's not necessarily, most audio purists would run it straight into the board with some type of a preamp. I have a Neve 8801 channel strip on there. It's probably as good a channel strip you can buy that has a preamp in it, processing for audio quality, EQ with the famous Neve sound, because that's my axe. When I'm doing voiceover work, not right now, but when I'm doing voiceover work on that system behind me, I want it to sound as good as it can using the limited capabilities of my voice and the quality, because I'm a little old-fashioned. I was brought up in the old days of radio announcers, so I announce a lot of my stuff. It's a great combination. The mic works great with it. The Neve, as you say, Dave, works with me. On this show, I'm using a Symmetrix 528E, which Alex gave me, which is an old analog mic processor. I just need that because I have a lot of dynamics. If I get excited and I start going a little crazy, the voice, it just gently keeps the level down and normal. But that isn't something you find in the music recording business. Alex, you're a Pro Tools master. Do you put a lot of plugins ahead of that, or do you try to let the mic shine?
Well, it depends what I'm doing. So if I'm doing, say, a voiceover session, if that's what I'm engineering, then no, I'm not going to do any processing. I'm just going to go clean in, because a lot of the people that are doing voiceovers, at least the ones that I've worked on, it's usually people recording demos, auditions, whether it's animation, commercial work, that kind of stuff. So we don't tend to use any processing. We just want raw mic audio. Because remember, when you're doing auditions and stuff like that, or if you're actually going to record something that is going to be used in an actual production and you're doing it remotely, you want the cleanest, most natural possible sound possible. Because remember, that file that you send is going to go to a mixing engineer who's going to want to do their own processing, and they need headroom. If you just start squashing it with compression, it's cooked. They can't do anything with that. Right. So when it comes to music production, there's different schools of thoughts on it. It depends. I grew up with analog. I still love analog gear. I'm not afraid to commit to an idea. I don't mind recording to tape, as they say, with a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ. Some engineers don't like doing that. They want to use very little or no processing or EQ at all. So again, it depends on who it is, and that's my workflow.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Go ahead.
In our world, in broadcasting, our mics do have mic processing, and with the Wheatstone board, it's built in. I have an expander, a compressor, a limiter, and a gate all available on every mic channel as part of the board, so that we can set the mics up. Because there is no independent engineer watching what the DJs are doing, it kind of helps them normalize their levels without them having to pay attention to what's going on, and they can focus more on the content of the show and less about having to ride their levels if there's the correct amount of mic processing. We don't actually, we want to make mic processing that you don't know is there. It's doing something, but you don't know it. That's the best way to set it up.
Absolutely.
What you just said, because it's like I have it, and I used to, when I was on AM radio, AM was very particular about having as much density in your sound as you could get. We just processed the heck out of our mics. It was a wall of sound. We used to laugh that there was so much compression on our mics that if you stopped talking, every piece of paper in the room would fly in and stick to the microphone. It's a broadcast joke. But that kind of extreme audio tailoring was a function of the style of broadcasting back in those days. Nowadays, I do like it for I like a little bit of pump at 8K. I drop it down at 160 a little bit, and I might put 2, maybe 3 dB of processing for compression and very slow attacks. It's not aggressive, because I don't want you, like Dave just said correctly, and I know Alex agrees, it's important that you don't hear it working. It's just, it's part of the sound of your voice. So I use it to the extent that I want to sculpt my voice a little bit so that I have a consistency there, but not so much that, as Alex says, that I bake it into the recording so down the line, if somebody has to process it, they're like, I can't do anything with this. There's no dynamic range. He's screaming through the spot, and it's bouncing all over the place. So, Alex, do you have a question you want to bring in?
Yeah, one of the questions that I had for you, Dave, was about the current state of the current landscape, what it's looking like for the next generation of broadcast engineers. So, one of the things that, I always hear from people is that it's getting more and more challenging to find younger people that are interested in doing these jobs. Well, let's just say broadcast engineering in general, right? And obviously now a lot of people go to school. I know lots of broadcast engineers that just have no formal training. They're all self-taught, or they apprenticed under someone. They kind of just got in on the ground level, grabbing coffees, doing audio editing maybe, but then they kind of work their way up to engineering as they trained under somebody. So what's that current landscape looking like? I mean, I don't know anybody now. I'm in my 40s. I don't know anyone in their 20s that's like, one day when I grow up, I want to be a broadcast audio engineer. So is that a challenge? Because, you know, a lot of people are now retiring. So who's replacing those people?
It is a challenge, and it is something that is being worked on in certain areas. I was talking with someone that's involved with Kent County High School in Maryland's radio station, and they actually bring in the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and they teach them the course to make them a certified radio operator to be able to operate consoles and operate boards, and they get an SBE certification, and that's being taught in the Kent County High School. And there's some other places in the US where the same thing is going on, where some of this curriculum is being brought into high schools, into technical high schools.
Wow, I went to the wrong high school.
Hey, there you go. Dave, you're at a university that has a nice radio station, but you also have other aspects that you, I guess, have available or that you teach. Is there a course in broadcasting, and do you go into digital media and things like that?
Most of the courses that we teach out of our space are more content related. They get the engineering side of it, you know, as part of the courses, but radio programming, sports casting are some of the courses that we actually teach. They're on the other side of the campus in the music building. There's a recording studio, and you can go and take recording studio engineering courses over there.
Oh, that's cool. Now, as I guess you're a mentor for all things technical. What's the interest, you know, as you peer out of somebody that has the same background that I do in terms of how long you've been around? Are there people that are interested in pursuing a career in broadcast engineering? Because that's part of Alex's original question. Do you see students gravitating that way or moving out of the college system into broadcast, or is it just an activity?
It's less, and one of the reasons is that broadcasting is a very unique, and it takes somebody that is not white collar, not blue collar, but both. Somebody that can jump in and gets their hands dirty, or show up at midnight and fix a problem. Today's people that are being trained for the workforce are all working in IT. At 5:01 in the afternoon, they go home and they don't worry about it until the next day, or they have someone else on call to do that job. Broadcasting's not like that. And it takes a special person that's really interested in dedicating themselves to the art of radio broadcasting, that it's tough to find those people these days.
What's the comparison between your terrestrial broadcast station, WVUD, and maybe other digital properties that don't you have a kitchen or a digital show? I'm trying to.
We have two. We have an HD1 and an HD2 that we're running with HD radio, and our HD2 is called The Basement, and it is a second audio stream that is it carries 100% student programming. It doesn't carry any of the community programming on it, so that it's edgier, and it carries more sports on it than our FM station.
How about streaming or YouTube? What are you guys doing there?
Well, for streaming, we do stream those two streams. We actually have a third stream, which is a sports only stream, so that if we're having programming on those two channels and we have another game to cover, we will actually fire up another stream and have a streaming only station for some sporting events. And we're talking about actually doing more with that streaming station than we had. In YouTube, we do a series called Live Lounge, and you can go on and they will do things that are very similar to the Tiny Desk concerts, where they'll bring in musical acts, they'll interview them, they'll talk to them, and they'll have them perform and record that up and edit it up as a YouTube program.
So where do you see the passion with today's students?
It's more in that area, the live with the bands, the interaction, and also working together. When we have the students come in to do those kinds of programming events, we'll have 20 or 30 students show up, which you really can't do in a radio program. So it's a it's a more collaborative, big effort to do these television style multi-camera productions that they're doing, that they sit down and edit down into a finished product to put on YouTube.
Got it. And Mark, you're an owner of a radio station that also has tentacles or extension into digital media. How's that working for you? You're making that transition, or you're making that addition for a terrestrial broadcast station to have a digital component to it. This might be music to somebody's ears. I'm just curious how that's working for you.
Well, it's working well for us as we enter the digital world and start to acquire new tools. It's making radio more interactive. But my question for Dave is, with equipment now moving more and more into the digital world and being less analog, and the tendency in new equipment is that it's not so much repairable anymore. You can't pull out the soldering iron and fix things. Do you think that as this equipment becomes more disposable, that there's going to be less need for engineers, and there will be more interest? The more interest there is in broadcast, there'll be more being on, in front of the camera or in front of the microphone, and less in the back end.
I agree that the amount of time spent repairing has gone down. I still do repair equipment down to the component level on some of our equipment. But as you say, when you get to a laptop, you're not going to go and dig in and replace parts inside the laptop on the circuit board level to fix it. It's a lot more economical to just replace it. One of the things that we still require engineers for is the fact that all this equipment doesn't talk to each other yet very easily. And it still takes a lot of work to sit there and work through getting things to talk to each other in the digital domain. Yes, they connect up, but in terms of getting all of the settings right, in terms of getting the data to match up to the point where the things understand each other, that's the new area in broadcasting that's much different than the old way, where you just connected things together, or you had to put in a transformer to fix the impedance between things. Now there's a lot more signal conditioning in digital to make things work together.
And also there's, I guess, less critical proprietary, like WheatNet is a proprietary communications protocol over IP that connects all of the various WheatNet consoles, and the same thing for Axia. But aren't they all kind of slowly switching over to AES 67, which is a standard, or Dante, to be able to communicate? Is that being embraced yet to be able to accomplish exactly what you're talking about?
They are making boxes that will talk. You can buy WheatNet components that will speak Dante or AS67, ESS, but in terms of it being native and being the preferred standard, no. The one thing I will say that a lot of manufacturers have gravitated to is something that Radio Systems created many years ago called Studio Hub, which is the using of RJ45s and network cables to distribute audio between consoles and pieces of equipment.
So it used to be that you would have an analog console, some type of a router system, and a ton of wiring, because everything had to go into the router, and then everything else had to go out of the router to be able to make that connectivity. If you're building a new studio today, a lot of that stuff is eliminated in favor of a digital routing system like WheatNet or whatever Axia calls it, and a live, I think it's called live wire. I think they call it
live
that.
wire, right?
Live wire and Dante.
But they don't talk to each other. And
they don't.
And the manufacturers of equipment are either putting in a add-in module, or they're dedicating themselves to one or the other of the systems, so that if you go with a certain brand of equipment, it will only connect into LiveWire. Other equipment will only connect into WheatNet. So there is still a lot of incompatibility out there.
Sure. Alex, do we have any other questions that you've seen stacking up here that people want to ask, or we want to ask David?
I will let Mark go to that. Mark, do we have anything in chat?
So I have a question for David. Can you make our radio workflow traffic system talk with our TLADJ automation system? Because I still go into the office and see stacks of paper and people with rulers making sure that the as plays are linked up with the automation system.
I have not used either of those two systems, in that we use on air by
Wide orbit.
different. No, not wide orbit. By
No?
Who is it? You have that. You were trying to sell me modules from that.
Are you talking about Media Touch?
Media Touch. Yeah, that's what I was
Okay,
thinking.
OMT. Yeah.
OMT Media Touch is what we're using, and so I don't. And then that is very different than your ENCO.
Yeah, a lot of the software manufacturers, by the way, most radio stations, I'll say 99.9% of them are run by a computer, some type of automation system, which is a playout system that allows you to do a live assist or a walk away, where all the digital media gets sequenced and played back over the airways through a console generally. And the way it used to be, now it's changing, is that you would have one software company providing the playout system. You'd have another one for scheduling the music, like RCS or other programs like that, Power Gold, I think there's a few of the others. And now they're starting to integrate all of that into one piece of software that does the scheduling and the programming, so that when you have this playout system, which is really a database, essentially, that's saying, I need this file, I'm going to play that segue here, play a jingle, do a liner, play a promo for a sporting event, whatever. It's a pretty sophisticated thing. And what's interesting about it, and I'm sure Dave finds this as a side effect, is that do you ever get the IT people that are learning IT in college getting interested in how all that works and how that all interconnects? Because you need that sophistication to be able to make sure your playout system works correctly. Big question, right?
It's an area that we don't let them get anywhere close to. It's an area that, yeah, we do not let the students anywhere near all of the back end side of things, because it's very touchy. You mentioned the playout system. Well, the playout system does a lot more than just play the music. It also sends out the title and artist information. It also does the logging for the commercial spots and all of that. And what he was talking about is the connection of it all together. And it's almost a black art that nobody really talks about. And a lot of times you've got to bring in somebody from these companies that, because they don't share their information about how their system works. So that in order for you to be able to connect A to B, you've got to have a third person that the company trusts, that they will allow as a consultant to come in and fix your system.
Yeah, the
They
Media
won't
Touch
give
system.
you the keys to your own system.
Gotcha. The Media Touch system is quirky. And it's kind of getting long in the tooth. I think they have a network version of it now, which is based on SQL, because after all, it is a database-driven program. And originally, when I was putting together the automation system for my old high school, we went with OMT and Media Touch because the big stations in the area, including yours, WVUD, all use the same software. And I thought, well, I'm going to teach the students how to use this playout system, because they are very quirky about how they're set up and how they operate. that they're going to have a little bit of a leg up because they're going to walk into a real radio station that's owned by Delmarva or Forever Media, and they're going to walk into another station in the country or excuse me in the area and have the same software. It's going to be familiar, but I'm with you. I understand you got to draw the line somewhere because a small mistake or somebody decides, well, maybe our playout system needs to be connected to the public internet. Very bad idea. There have been many instances where something's happened and it's gotten hacked and it screws things up. Are you connected to the internet at all on your playout system, or is
No,
it
we're not.
firewall?
We're not connected to the. And the other thing is that you mentioned OMT Media Touch, and it has a database. Many of the newer systems that have come out later don't have a separate database. They bake all of the data into the metadata of the files of the music and the commercials so that they can be uploaded and the whole thing run in the cloud without having to have that database that it always refers back to.
Well, that's one of the biggest failures that I've ever dealt with on automation is that if the database becomes corrupted, you have to import everything and put all that metadata back in. If the metadata is attached to the files that are added, then it can rebuild that information rather easily. In fact, behind me, I have an entire TM library, gold disk library that's been converted to linear PCM WAV files, and it has all the metadata. And I don't mind telling you that was a multi-year project because it has to have the proper intros and outros, whether it's a fade or it ends cold. Then it has to have the artist information in there because you have to make these reports out to Sound Exchange, which includes the RDS information that Dave was just talking about, so that they can track what songs get played and who's listening when that gets played. So do you guys have that issue being a educational institution, Dave?
Well, Sound Exchange has a very interesting model in that you can pay extra. It's $100 extra per year. And if you have less than a certain number of listeners, you can avoid doing all that data paperwork. And you do not have to give them all that title and artist information every month like the big broadcasters do. They have to come up with a report that's what songs were played, how many listeners were playing, and what was the IP address of every one of those listeners, the time they started on the stream and the time they left your stream. All that has to be reported every month.
And that's a messed up system. I mean, honestly, I haven't seen it work really well. And I think the record companies are a little greedy about it. And it's the only system. And by the way, Sound Exchange is a response to the government getting involved and telling them that, well, you must work with what's called a statutory license, and this determines that you're not doing a on-demand service. Let's make sure that we understand that your broadcast station isn't all driven by request on demand, because that would affect the ability to sell these songs versus an on-demand service like your Pandora or your Apple. This is a very complicated issue, very fraught with, I mean, there's a lot of lawsuits that are continually going back and forth. Alex, you may know a little more about that because it involves a lot more digital interweb or whatever you want to call it, compensation to the artists aren't really happy. They're not getting that much money out of this. It's kind of a ripoff, isn't it?
It's pretty bad, right? The ability to make a living from streaming music is non-existent, basically. And I don't see it changing anytime soon with the way we distribute media right now. Is that and every single streaming company pays different rates. But we're talking pennies on the dollar. Spotify is probably one of the worst. I think Apple Music pays a little bit more. I don't have the charts in front of me to give you the exact numbers, but it's why a lot of bands now have to rely on touring. They have to rely on merchandise. They have to build their own communities now because you can't make money selling CDs or vinyl records anymore. Yes, I know vinyl's made a comeback. In fact, a couple of years ago, I just saw some stats saying that vinyl records have now outpaced CDs, but the majority of people are still listening on streaming music platforms, and those platforms are not able to pay the artists what they need to make a living. So, you know, it's pretty abysmal right now. And again, I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, that's changing quite a bit. I mean, CDs are kind of on their way out. They've been on their way out for a while. I mean, it was a great deal for the record companies. I remember the first time I was invited by Sony to come over to the Waldorf Astoria to see this new miracle of invention they'd come up with between them and Philips Electronics out of, I guess they're in Denmark. No, they're German. I don't know. What is Philips? I know Steve Stryker would know. So, Steve, tell us what. Anyhow, they invented it. They invented the technology, and the real interesting thing about CDs when they first came out, it was just their way of reselling their catalog to a different consumer that wanted digital audio. And unfortunately, in the beginning, CDs were pretty bad. But I know radios kind of grabbed the CD zeitgeist to something like they were calling themselves CD 101.5, and they'd play the songs off of a couple of old CD players before they had bespoke devices made specifically for radio. But Dave, do you have any CD players, or do anybody do live shows where they're playing records or CDs?
About 30 to 40% of our shows are done live with CD players still.
So they haul CDs in?
It's a problem in that there are not any good broadcast CD machines being made anymore.
No.
And as a matter of fact, I was about to tell you that LG has just announced that they are ending their support and their manufacture of Blu-ray equipment. And
Wow.
Sony is following suit. So the Blu-ray industry is going to be dying soon. So on the video side, those video players are going to be going away, just like the CD players, are much tougher to get today than they had been.
And Dave, I just heard today actually, PS Audio at Exponent, they're a hi-fi manufacturer. They just announced, because they just came out with a new CD transport product, but Marantz is the company that makes the actual transport mechanisms, and they just announced that they are ending manufacturing. So they did a huge purchase order for pretty much, like, I think several hundred units or whatever they had left. But that industry too, even just regular CD players, is going to become a challenge. I don't think physical media is going to die anytime soon as far as Blu-ray discs are concerned. I think especially, I think the boutique manufacturers are going to continue to make discs for the foreseeable future. There is a niche market that still makes them a living, people that are film connoisseurs. And I'm a big believer in physical media, not just for film preservation, which I think is incredibly important, but just for the better quality of the video and the audio as well. And also the same goes for listening to music on disc or vinyl. I just think it sounds better than the compressed standard that we're getting through streaming audio. So I think it's going to become like a niche market where you can still make money, but you're not going to get super rich doing it.
Meanwhile, CDs are it's pretty famously covered in the recent news that CDs you had from the 80s are turning to rot. They're rotting. I don't know if you've seen that, Dave, where I guess it delaminates around the edges, and the metal foil substrate on the CD I guess gets fungus in there or something.
A lot of the less expensive CDs were only protected on one side by paint. And once that paint layer starts to deteriorate, that it gets into the reflective surface underneath and it stops working. So yeah, CDs do not hold up well to the environment. So yes, if you wanted to store them in oxygen-free containers at prestige, very precise humidity levels and temperature levels, you can preserve a CD for a long time. But in your car, forget it.
Yeah, exactly, because they're going to melt anyhow. I mean, it's like I used to have records in my car, and if the sun directly hit them, I'd bring the record out, and they'd be whoa, they'd be completely warped out of shape. I agree with physical media. I love it, and I have it. I mean, like I said, I've got a huge CD library downstairs that I've collected over my years in radio when they had CDs. And also the compilation files that were created. But I also recognize that I better get the content off of those CDs just in case there is this rot coming to my CD library where I've invested thousands and thousands in this. It's crazy.
when you can purchase a 128 gigabit thumb drive for less than $10.
Yeah, or you can get a NVMe hard drive that's super fast, or just an old spinning drive, like 4 or 5 terabytes. That'll cover a good piece of that, that nonlinear file. So I like to save them, and when if I pull them off of the CD, I usually resample them at 88.2 because I like the math involved, because CDs aren't going to change. The Red Book standard requires that they be 44.1. And other than those specialty CDs, I think, Alex, I'll let you jump in here. Isn't there an SACD format? There's a couple other formats out there that are high definition, multi-threaded.
Yeah, there's
SAC
audiophiles like SACD. Also, the other thing that's becoming popular with audiophiles is DSD audio. Yep. Which is it's a very different system from PCM, which is pulse code or modulation. DSD is what does it stand for? It's pulse density modulation.
They're one bit.
It's a different system. It's a one-bit system.
Yeah.
And from what I understand of it, I've never actually listened to it because I don't have any way of playing back DSD audio. But all the people that I know that have actually had an experience with it said it is the closest thing to reproducing analog that you'll get.
There you go. Well, our ears are still analog, at least last I checked. They haven't started putting chips. Dave, are you chipped?
I'm not chipped.
You're not chipped yet. Elon Musk has his way. You're going to get chipped sometime soon. Mark, do we have any other questions or comments coming in?
We do. We have some questions here for David. What kind of audio processors these days have loudness metering on them? And what is the loudness standard that you have to adhere to?
Well, I would say that many of the new audio processors out there have no metering. A lot of it today, if you're looking at new equipment, it's pretty much software. You look at Orban or any of the other major manufacturers, they're building all their new products as software appliances. And in terms of a loudness standard, now television is different. Television does subscribe to some and has some rules about commercial loudness, but radio really does not have any of those restrictions that have ever been placed on it to determine the loudness of things.
Yeah, there's a restriction for volume, but not for loudness, which is more of a psychoacoustical thing. You can't over-modulate or over-exceed your FM.
Right, you can't over-deviate the FM transmitter.
Right.
And you guys don't have you don't have to adhere to like -24 LUFS or whatever those BS 1770 EBUs, all those different standards for integrated loudness. So they're with broadcasters, I guess all radio stations are going to be different.
We have no rules concerning that. Television does, but radio does not.
Wow.
Is that because of the NAB, or is it because of SMPTE, or is it because of the FCC? I mean, lots more acronyms if you need them.
Well, a lot of it comes from the government because of people complaining that the commercials were louder than the programs, because whenever the people record up the television commercials, they would use processing and push that average level up much higher than the programs, so that everyone complained that they had to reach over and turn their volume down on their television when the commercials came on, because they were much more compressed and the audio density was much higher on the commercials. So that there are rules, and the NAB originally came up with their best practices years ago. If you remember, people could have their station certified by the NAB as being, following the best practices for television. That really didn't fall into radio.
Yeah, radio
had
is
our own loudness wars, but that was a different thing.
Yeah, I was just getting into that. The loudness wars, who's loudest on the dial. I'm just hoping that we get over that, because it's bad on 2 points. It's bad when you overprocess a station, especially one like yours, which has all kinds of formats. You could do it if it was all rock maybe, or all heavy metal. But if you have classical 1 minute and some kind of 80s punk rock or whatever playing. They have completely different processing algorithms that you would want to apply to it. And then, meanwhile, the record companies have jumped into the bandwagon and they're mastering records with extreme loudness because they want to be the loudest on the dial. So now you got all of these things fighting. And as Alex said earlier, you don't want to bake your voice with too much processing. Well, that's what the record companies are doing. They're baking the hell out of the songs. If you look at a typical Taylor Swift song or new release, and you look at it on a waveform, it's like this. It's like a bar across
right.
your
in
waveform.
the old days, you'd look at the VU meter, and it would just stand there and just sit there at one. And it would just shake a little, just shake a little bit on the old, and nowadays we have LED meters, but they do the same thing. They just go up to like 98% and shake on certain pieces of audio.
And they haven't gotten over that yet, so that's an issue, and that creates all kinds of listener fatigue. Alex, when you're talking to people about high-end hi-fi gear, how do they respond to the fact that broadcast is so overprocessed in many ways?
Not good. Not good. I mean, I don't like listening to the radio anymore just because I'm so spoiled by my own setup with my audio that, I have a nice, even when I do listen to streaming audio, which is not that often, I use it to discover new music. I have a decent DAC. I have a really nice integrated amplifier. It's all analog. I like my Vandersteen 2CE loudspeakers. I've got a nice turntable with a nice cartridge in it. So, it's just the sound of radio is, anything that's broadcast over the air to me just doesn't sound right anymore. And I say this as someone that grew up with radio, and I used to listen to CFOX in the 90s, which was my favorite radio station. I used to listen to music all the time. But it sounds so antiquated now. I just don't understand why would anyone? And no offense, look, I know a lot of people still listen to the radio for music. I listen to the radio mostly for AM or talk radio. I love that kind of thing. I listen to it for traffic reports, but sorry, for music playback, no.
Yeah, I'm pretty good friends with Frank Foti over at the Telos Alliance, and they make the Omnia product. And it's funny, in the broadcast industry, you're either an Omnia fan and you like it for these reasons, or you're an Orban fan and you like it for these reasons. And there may be a number of other, things. It's not like there isn't other devices out there. There's a new device come out from our friends at Angry Audio called Stereo Tool. And I think that's the hardware version of the Stereo Tool that Hans von Suppen created, which is getting a lot of attention. It's a piece of software that does a lot of different things, including it declips those over-processed mastered songs. So it's kind of interesting what's out there. Dave, what do you like for sound? Do you have a specific processor you enjoy? Do you have a specific radio station that you would like to emulate?
Well, in terms of audio processing, I've been in the Orban camp for many years, and I will admit that the transmitter manufacturers are getting into this game too now, because you can order your transmitter with a server built in, and the server will spin up virtual operating systems that will run your software processing right in the transmitter. So
doesn't Nautel have one now that has all the bespoke boxes, RDS and MPX and all that? Absolutely,
and they've gone with Omnia. So you get Omnia inside if you go with Nautel.
Right.
Unless you go now, Optimod also made Optimod PCI cards, and I do have some the previous generation of Nautel equipment that had Orban PCI cards inside. So I again am in the Orban camp, not in the Omnia camp.
Yeah, don't tell Frank, but I have a pair of those 1101E Optimod cards that you're talking about that are run by software that actually I think those are made by another company, believe it or not, audio company. But I like that for audio playout. And I'm also a big fan, full disclosure, of Audio Science, which is a company that makes pristine, kind of expensive, but pristine audio playout cards for automation systems. that are made specifically for broadcast. And they're into Dante and other things. So it's kind of neat to see all that going on. Another question coming up. Do we want to go for?
I was
Yes, we
going to
do.
mention, go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was
Okay.
going to mention that most of the console manufacturers are sidestepping this whole issue by creating direct drivers out of your computer playback so that you never go through an audio card. It stays in digital all the way from the file all the way to the transmitter. It's never converted once in my system.
Yeah, I saw that on the new console that's made by Angry Audio. Mark, you were going to give some questions?
Yes. Okay. What kind of equipment can you not live without at your transmitter site?
A transmitter.
At the transmitter site. I'll tell you what we have there. We have a remote control unit. The one we also have our RDS equipment is out there for encoding the title and artist in analog. A backup STL is out there.
Studio transmitter link.
And we have a unique situation is I have dark fiber between my studio and my transmitter. So I extend my studio audio network all the way to the transmitter. And also I can put my HD processing on it in the studio and have it delivered via IP directly to the transmitter. Here again, no conversions done at any time to analog or to anything other than AES digital audio.
And
You just
Dave, can
put
you
a new
explain
tower.
what dark fiber is? What is the difference? I've heard
Unused,
of fiber.
not lit up.
Oh, okay.
Dark fiber is physically just a piece of fiber that has one end at one location, the other end at the other location, and no electronics in between. Many people, if you go to buy fiber, they will put their own end equipment on there and give you a gigabit Ethernet output coming off of this fiber, but they don't let you modulate the fiber any way you want between the studio and the transmitter.
It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing to have. Dark
But
makes it sound like it's bad.
Dark fiber is it's harder to get because you actually have to own the piece of fiber between place A and place B versus just renting fiber from some major phone company.
So you have a new tower. I guess you had the same old transmitter. Maybe you had to upgrade it. Tell us a little bit about what your upgrades are going on there. It's part of an extension of the question just asked.
Well, we moved from one transmitter site to another transmitter site because we were originally on a building that is slated for demolition sometime in the next few years, but it's an empty building now and they're looking to decommission it. So we had to move off of the transmitter site and they put up another tower on the property. And we had to bring in a transmitter shelter and then move all our equipment over to that new location. We don't own that new tower, so we had limited amount of space that we could take on that tower. So our new antennas has less gain than our old antenna did, which means that our transmitter had to put out more power. So we had to actually buy an upgrade to the transmitter to have its modules put out more power so we could feed our new antenna.
And it's cool how they make transmitters now. You were telling me a while back that everything's modular now. It's not like a big tube, a final tube. It's like these little modules that you drop in, and the software says, well, if you give us $10,000 or whatever it is, we'll allow you to broadcast 6,000 watts more. Is that kind of how it works with the
It's very much like your Tesla, where it's the same vehicle, but you pay them a fee and they unlock a new feature. So the transmitters are the same way.
Yeah, and that's Nautel, by the way. When your buddy comes to you and asks you about the transmitter he wants to replace, he's going to say Nautel 9 times out of 10. And you've had good luck with that, right? With Nautel, just in general?
Yes, their transmitter has been very reliable, and if it fails, it doesn't go off. It just shuts down the part that isn't working right and keeps going. So it has a soft failure mode to the point where I've never lost the transmitter.
Wow,
maybe I've lost a module here and there. Maybe I've lost a power supply module, and it has 12 of them in there, 12 power supply modules. It can lose a few and keep going.
That's cool. The ever-ready transmitter. Mark, you have any other questions to wrap things up here?
We do. How do you handle emergency power generation at both the studio and the transmitter?
Well, for years, we were in another building, and that building had emergency generator power that was designed for lighting and not for full emergency capabilities. But on our new location, we have a 75 kilowatt standby propane generator that will come on within about 20 seconds and carry the full load of the building, so that we'll be off for 20 seconds and then we'll be right back on. And the other thing is that most of this equipment, it gets its reset and it comes right back on where it was, so that we don't even have a UPS out of the transmitter, because it would make no sense, because the transmitter itself takes 240 volt 3-phase, and until that comes back, nobody's going to hear anything anyway. So why bother UPSing? Because everything else comes up faster than the transmitter does when the power comes back. Because all that analog equipment, like just comes right back on. The routers and all, they only take a few seconds. The transmitter itself takes longer to reboot itself than anything else. So having the UPS doesn't really help us.
There you go. I think he's saving you money here, Mark, somehow.
I think Walt's listening and my wallet's now on fire.
There you go. Get that credit card. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. It's always good to have a technical guy that fills a very important role at a radio station. And you certainly had enough experience, and I hope there are more like you coming up through the ranks, because those days are disappearing. Well, who's going to replace you when you retire? You have somebody lined up? That's a good question.
Yeah, no, we don't have anyone yet.
Maybe a contract engineer, something like that, go for you?
Well, there aren't really any contract engineers in the area either. When you get right down to it, there are very few around now. If you want to have someone come down from Philadelphia, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, Dave, thank you very much for being on the program. We appreciate the questions that came in from everybody. And Alex, what's the usual procedure for telling us what you want to hear and what comments or questions you may have?
Thanks, Mitch. You can join our Discord community. I'm going to leave our QR code up over my left shoulder right there at the edge of the screen. So if you just scan that with the camera app on your phone, you will be able to get into our community. That's the best place to chat with us during the show, after the show. We can talk about whatever topics you like. You can suggest topics. You can suggest guests, that kind of stuff. Of course, you can also reach out to us on social media. We're at The Last Angry DJ. We also have an email address, hello@thelastangrydj.com. And this show is available pretty much everywhere on YouTube. It's also available in audio-only format if you prefer that as a podcast, on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google as well. You can ask your Amazon Alexa device or whatever smart device you have to find that podcast as well. If you'd like to show your support for the show, there's numerous ways you can do that. You can subscribe to the show, hit the button down there. You can share it with a friend. That would be appreciated as well. You can also donate if you go to patreon.com/donate. Sorry, not donate. Patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. That's the name of the show. And become a coffee supporter at $2 a month. We would sincerely appreciate. Also, our thank yous to the people at Boink Software, particularly Oliver Breidenbach, for letting us use Memo Live, which is the production software that we use to make this show possible. We couldn't do the show, literally could not do the show at this level, at this quality, streaming in 4K, looking like how it looks today. We would not be able to do it without Memo Live. So if you're looking for a new production tool, you might want to check those guys out. Back to you.
Is there a thing that they could go to donate a single malt scotch, maybe 3 fingers for every show that I do? I wouldn't mind that.
We'll work on it.
Yeah, okay, we'll work on that. Mark, you have any comments about today's show and how much money either Dave is spending of your money from Walt, or how things are moving forward for you at your radio stations?
We're banning David from ever coming back on again.
Yeah, you can't. He works for the University of Delaware. Come on, you can't mess with that. Thanks, Mark.
A lot
Appreciate
of money.
that. And Dave, thank you for joining us on the program. It was good to have you here, and it's nice to talk to somebody that remembers everything, all the details of technology, and that's truly what it is. If you're a chief engineer, back in the day when I was I guess a fledgling engineer, I tried to learn what I could on the side. You also had to be a plumber. And you also had to be an electrician to wire the house or fix the AC or build the shack that the transmitter sat in. Do you still feel it's that way, Dave? Have things changed a little bit? Are you still doing all those jobs, or can you put your foot down and relax?
Well, working for a university, they do have departments that handle HVAC and electrical and plumbing and all those things. But when it comes right down to it, you still have to pay attention to your own facility, and nobody knows it better than you do. And when problems happen, if you're the person that interfaces with the plumber, you get a much better job, and you get what you need done, or the electrician. Instead of what they want to do, you want it done the way you want it done, because it's a radio studio and you're working with acoustics and you're working with RF and interference and stuff. So that if you're involved, you can make everything work better. And I will admit that I fix a lot of things myself, that it's a lot faster than calling somebody and waiting for a week.
Yep, it's as we say, a plethora. Would I be the correct word? Plethora of details you have to know as a chief engineer, and it's a fun job. And it's also like Dave alluded to earlier, that you have to have a passion for it. You have to have a certain passion to be in broadcasting. I feel it. I know what he's talking about. I'm sure Mark feels it. He feels it in his wallet. He feels it in his heart. He feels it in all the other places. So thank you for your participation on today's program. Next week, we're going to have a special time that we're going to broadcast, because it's Easter Sunday, so we can't interfere with the Easter Bunny or the resurrection of Christ, etc. All of that stuff. We'll keep your nose to YouTube. We'll let you know when we're going to have our program next week. We're going to do them all, but we want to make sure that we do it at a time that's convenient for everybody. Until then, we want to thank you, and stay safe.